reliable, unfortunately.
By the way, it's unfortunate that it becomes so difficult and expensive for a third-party candidate to get the exposure and to even get on the ballot. I guess other third-party candidates are experiencing that difficulty besides you. I recently saw the interview of Ralph Nader's endorsement of you, which was on April 17th. Brian Montpellier of CBS News, a political reporter, I hosted Ralph Nader on his show, and Ralph gave you a glowing endorsement. I was very impressed by that. He called you a very, very progressive, that you had a very, very progressive record. That of course he mentioned your 2 terms as the mayor of Salt Lake City, but also he pointed out that your background includes being that of a constitutional attorney and a civil rights lawyer, which I was very pleased to hear and to learn. And he stated how he gave examples of your progressive positions about public financing, about the minimum wage, cutting the defense budget by at least 50%, and the environment, and so on and so forth. Can you iterate your major positions and how they contrast with the existing Democratic and Republican candidates?
Well, first of all, I was very appreciative about Ralph's support of me. He never uses the word endorsement. He makes a point about that. So I think the word support is better because he doesn't want to be pinned with something that I might say or do and have people say they endorse me. But I think that he and I see things through very similar lenses, and that is that our government should be acting on behalf of we the people and not be sold out to those who simply have the money to buy and pay for these politicians in Washington. So much of the failure in public policy that we talk about is due to that corrupting influence of money. You only have to follow the money to see why it is that we have so many public policy disasters, both emanating from the White House and the United States Congress. Let's take the biggest disaster that's looming, and that is the failure of the United States to provide the essential international leadership on climate change. There's only one reason that we're not doing the right thing, given the state of knowledge in the scientific community, near unanimity, probably 96-97% of scientists in agreement about the scope of the problem with climate change, the causes, the human causes of climate change, primarily the burning of fossil fuels and the destruction of forests. What could be done about it? What we're going to see in the future, the catastrophic consequences of climate disruption if we don't take action now. And people in the future are going to look back and say, why didn't they, based on the knowledge that they had, take responsible action to save us from these cataclysmic consequences? And I think the clear answer is that people in our political system have been bought off primarily by the fossil fuel industries, the coal, oil, and gas companies. And that's why they haven't acted in the interest of us, of future generations, and of the world's inhabitants everywhere, now and far into the future. Same thing with healthcare. Bill, we're the only country in the entire developed world that doesn't provide essential health care for all citizens. It's immoral. It's politically incredible that we haven't reached the point that every other industrialized nation has reached. And they go about it different ways, but not one of them rely upon for-profit insurance companies for the provision of basic health care.
Rocky,
and yet we do in this country, and it's gotten so bad that when President Obama pledged to fix the system, he sold out entirely, as did Congress, to the for-profit insurance companies, as well as the pharmaceutical industry. And that's why our premiums continue to go up. That's why we have still a healthcare system that's more than twice as expensive as the average among the industrialized world, and why even if the Obama healthcare plan is fully implemented, 23 million Americans still will be without basic health care. Follow the money. That's why we're in the bind that we're in here in the United States today.
Rocky, if you were president and you had the backing of Congress, what system would you have proposed? I was very disappointed. In 2008, I believed in President Obama when he said, change you can believe in, hope and change the way Washington works. And I started to become disenchanted starting in the spring of 2009, and then progressively it deteriorated. And I love your quote that I guess you uttered sometime in 2011 when you left the Democratic Party, and I think I beat you to that. I registered as an independent before you did, but I expected President Obama to at least propose the public option, and he never proposed it, and I thought that was unconscionable. Key issues. Ideally, I would have proposed a single-payer system because I think that probably would be the most effective. But I'd like to hear what you would have proposed if you had. Let's just say you had the backing of Congress. And by the way, he had I think 59-60 votes in the Senate. He had the Congress in 2009. So what would you have proposed, Rocky?
I would have proposed what the majority of the American people wanted, and that is a single-payer Medicare for all system.
Good.
So that you take out all the profits that are going to the insurance company, their marketing costs, payment of people to sit around in offices and try to figure out how to deprive us of coverage for insurance for which we've paid outrageous premiums. This is what the American people want, and there's very good reason for it. Single-payer systems have been incredibly successful in those countries where they've been implemented. But even multiple-payer systems where they've been nonprofit insurers, like in Germany, it works out very well there, as in Italy. But Canada's system, Taiwan's system, their single-payer systems, that's what we need in this country, because if we had those multiple payer systems, I think you'd see the same kind of corruption in Washington lead us to a far less efficient system. And we have a single payer system, but it only applies to people above a certain age, and that system is Medicare. We also have a socialized system in this country. It's called the VA hospital, where not only the payer is the government, but also the medical facilities belong to the government, and those who work there are employed by the government. And the VA hospital has had some problems in the past, but actually in terms of the quality of medical care, it's ranked, I read recently, even above the Mayo Clinics for excellence in the services provided. So there are different ways of getting there, but I think very clearly a single-payer Medicare for all system is where we ought to be. Now, President Obama promised a lot of things during his campaign, and I know that there are a lot of people that wanted to believe. I frankly warned people that they were going to be vastly disappointed, because I saw all sorts of signs even leading up to the election. President Obama promising us that he would join a filibuster when he was in the United States Senate and help block proposed legislation that would provide retroactive criminal immunity for telecommunication companies for their involvement in the illegal surveillance of American citizens' communications. And then as soon as then Senator Obama won the Democratic nomination, he turned 180 degrees and voted in favor of that legislation. And that's after 3 telecommunication companies spent $12 million during a 3-month period of time for its lobbying blitz. Now, how many of us get to commit federal felonies and go to Congress and get Congress to say, oh, never mind, we'll grant you retroactive immunity under the law? That's the kind of two-tiered system we have in this country, two-tiered system of justice. We're supposed to be a people that believe in liberty and justice for all, and yet it really is a system where it's the system of justice is different depending on how powerful you are and how wealthy you are. So President Obama showed his stripes even before he was elected. He voted for full funding for the illegal occupation of Iraq when he was in the United States Senate. He was in the hip pocket of the nuclear power industry when he was in the Illinois legislature. So when we started moving into that healthcare debate, and he wouldn't even put universal single-payer healthcare on the table, it didn't come as much of a surprise that then he would back off on the notion of a public option. But what really surprised even me is how timid he was, how quickly he took that option off the table. It's almost like all the Republicans had to do was snarl a little bit and say that they were going to oppose public option, and he came out, I'll never forget his words, well, a public option isn't essential for health care reform. That's what he said.
Outrageous.
And you know, at that, the insurance companies look at it. They must have just been skipping all the way to the bank after that, because now we've got a system where the government purports to be able to tell every one of us that we have to buy this perverse product from for-profit insurance companies.
Amazing. By the way, Glenn Greenwald wrote an excellent book, With Liberty and Justice for Some. Perhaps you've read it, or is that why you chose the name for your party, Justice Party? Because